They had to make a fuel pump transfer. During that process, we're told that possibly some gasoline leaked out into the cabin, and the pilots have been on oxygen ever since. Again, we are awaiting their arrival. There are some 100,000 people estimated to arrive out here. They're continuing to arrive. I've just been told that there are 50,000 people actually on the premises of Edwards Air Force Base at the Mojave Desert on the dry lake bed here.
Greg, I'm wondering, what do you see from down below? Does it look like an overcast sky to you?
No, as a matter of fact, it is clearing up. Earlier this morning, there was some rain and even a little bit of snow, Reed, but the clouds seem to be pushing out over the horizon, and it is crystal clear here, and it's supposed to be perfect for landing. The pilots are going to be extremely fatigued, obviously, after all of this, and that's the purpose for the dry lake bed instead of a runway, because you can never gauge the abilities of a pilot after they've been through 9 full days of flight. Rutan has reportedly flown 85% of this mission. As a matter of fact, in the first few days of the mission, first 2.5 days, he flew all but 3 hours. He was in the pilot's seat. Mission Control at one point was desperately trying to get him out. And there was a period of time where they thought if they couldn't get him out of the pilot's seat, they would suggest that the mission be aborted. A friend of Rutan's, one of his best friends and a flight buddy, a guy named Mike Melville, was called in out of work. He was brought to the radio room, and he was able to talk Rutan out of the seat. But at that period of time, they were considering it a crisis situation. Since then, Jeannie Yeager has done some of the flying, but again, Rutan has been in that pilot seat for 85% of the time. There might be another reason for that. It's apparently very uncomfortable in the cabin, and it's much more comfortable in the pilot's seat. Those who are in the cabin, Jeannie Yeager for the most part, has been bumped, bruised, and knocked around inside that cabin like a pinball.
It's unusual, Greg, in that we're seeing history as it's being made live, not only hearing about it or hearing from it, but seeing and hearing it. It's hard to believe that in, say, 1927, when another epic voyage was made, Lindbergh across the Atlantic, it took so much time just to find out had it really happened. It's as if somehow we have been warped ahead into some new time zone when events no longer have any lag to them. We are there.
Right you are, and while I wasn't around for the Lindbergh flight, I've certainly read about it. This would be comparable as far as I'm concerned. This whole situation is, you could compare it to a mom and pop organization. That a group of volunteers and a few bucks, a wing and a prayer, they were able to get this plane from the backside of a napkin in a restaurant 6 years ago to reality that it is today. Most people compare this with the Lindbergh flight, although you must keep in mind that when Lindbergh made his flight, he did not have the kind of technical wizardry that has been provided for Voyager. He certainly didn't know exactly what the weather was going to be, and Voyager has had expert help in that area from meteorologist Len Snellman, who kept them out of bad weather for all but 30 minutes of the flight, which is pretty remarkable.
Greg, you have to wonder if they've rehearsed anything that must be said, some enduring statement that must be put in stone someplace on a statue. Lindbergh, we're told, when he got out at the airport and was nearly mobbed in Paris, said, "Well, I made it." This was thought to be inappropriate, for example, for a man who landed on the moon, so Neil Armstrong had to come up with something more memorable than that. A small step for a man, a great leap for mankind. Is there any indication around Edwards in the flight shack there, Greg, that some thought's been given to this? What does one say on the threshold of history?
If you know anything about Dick Rutan, I can't imagine him saying anything poetic as the landing on the moon or the other ones that you mentioned. Dick Rutan, and many people aren't aware of this, is that he spent 20 years in the military with the Air Force. He flew more missions over North Vietnam than any other pilot. And he is somebody who is a kind of down-home person. He is not one who seeks glory. He and Jeannie Yeager are both similar in that manner. Jeannie Yeager is extremely quiet and shy. Rutan is more outgoing and is said to have a greater ego, but through several conversations I've had with him, he is genuinely one of the nicest people that you will want to meet, and he's not doing this for the glory. So when he gets off the plane, basically we've been told that these people will be so wiped out, so fatigued, that they may not be able to walk, and the ambulance will be standing by to take them to the Air Base Hospital to have them checked out for a couple of hours.
Greg, we should mention right here that after those checkouts are completed, they do plan to have a news conference, and CNN, of course, plans to have that live as we do the landing, which couldn't be too many minutes away, could it?
Well, we're told now about 9 to 10 minutes away from landing, and the excitement is building. Reed, if you were here, you would understand that what...
Look at the crowd. You'd think the shuttle was coming back from one of its first experimental voyages.
That's exactly the way it's been described, too, and certainly with as much excitement over, say, the first couple of shuttle flights. People are now looking around, trying to locate her. People are pointing, saying, there she blows. They're looking with their binoculars, and they're going to fly right above the cloud, we're told. The live shot that you're seeing from the chase plane shows it over clouds, but from our vantage point, those clouds dissipate, and they should be coming over the clouds into full view of the 50,000 people who are loving spirit out here, free spirits.
It is that these very skies have been wound up by the... Northrop flew his flying wing here. It finally would be disastrous for the early experimenters. Billy Mitchell spent a lot of time up there when he was trying to tell people that objects on the ground actually could be bombed from the air. You're right, Greg, the place literally reeks with the history of men with wings.
Certainly so. And now we are being told that they are within eyesight. I'm looking around. The sun is in my eyes, so it's very hard to see. But several people say they have spotted them. What do you see from the vantage point from the live shot?
Well, we have an unfair vantage point because we're just about 30 yards off the left wing. And most of the time when the aerial shot's up, we see very, very well. Nothing like eyeballing it in, though. You get a concept, I'm sure you will, of something that even we can't quite view from here. That's the idea that between your eyeball and the object is only molecules of air.
Ray, during takeoff, we were placed at the 14,000-foot marker at Edwards Air Force Base, and the crew was saying, well, the plane will be up in the air at 7,000 feet because every test flight before that, 7,000 feet was about where the plane took off. But as it turns out, the plane was fuel heavy, the wings were dragging on the ground, and it hit the 14,000-foot level in front of us, and the wings just barely came up off the ground, the bird pulling into the air, trying to get its body off the ground. It was one of the most exciting things that I think I've ever seen. These wings are much different than an airplane that you and I fly in. They arch, they can go 35 feet in either direction, almost like a bird. And when it lifted off, the wings arched up almost like a pterodactyl. As it soared into the heavens, and now it's coming home after 9 days.
All right, we can see her very well. The sun is glinting off the skin of that elongated, flexible wing. And you can see she's out over the flat country, that high basin, as if some prehistoric designer had decided, one day I'll let men fool around with the idea of flying, and when I do, I'll let them do it here. Greg, you see from the ground now a fair shot.
It's hard to imagine what these people will be like when they get out. They've been in the plane for 9 days. We've described the cockpit as about the size of a phone booth. They've been bumped and bruised and thrown around in the cabin like a pinball. And they've been through every emotion possible, the highs of knowing that they could make it, to the lows of thinking that it was all doomed and that they would have to land this thing prematurely. So their emotional state may be in question when they get here. I'm sure they will be very emotional to get on the ground and say, hello, Mother Earth.
All right, we're seeing the shot from the ground. We're seeing it from the air.
Okay, now we have them in sight now. Clear view. We have the chase planes on both wings, and there is another chase plane. Behind it, looks like several hundred yards. We're told that Rutan, who likes to put on a show, he does stunt shows throughout the year, may make a pass over first and then come in for a landing, just to show everybody the beauty of the bird. At this point in time, it's a beautiful bird, but when it took off, everyone was saying how spindly and ugly it was. Two chase planes on the sides with Voyager in the middle. And it's hard to believe that this plane has been around the world without refueling.
So we're going to get a victory lap, if not a victory roll, over that crowd, Greg.
Right. They were joking yesterday about they may make Voyager do a roll, a figure 8, and that way they could claim a record for not only around the world, but the largest figure 8 ever done. And we have it in clear view now. Looks like a bird from our vantage point. The long wings. Started off with 7,000 pounds of fuel, weighing about 11,000 pounds. The body itself without fuel was just a little over 2,000, about the weight of a Volkswagen.
You're a good friend? My good friend Dick Rattan.
Sailing in slowly. Told that Bert Rattan, the designer of the plane, is in the chase plane on the right. The live shot that we're getting, I believe, is coming from the plane to my left. And you are looking at the left side of the Voyager.
Circle this way.
And he did make a pass over. He seems to be heading back out toward the east as he slowly descends toward the lake bed.
Probably going over and say hello to the folks over at Boron over there to the east of the mountain.
This button right here on the side.
You know, after living with these people for 9 days and you get to find out what kind of free spirits live here, people were saying that there's no telling what Rattan would do when he got over the lake bed.
You'll let me know when there's something good, huh?
I don't know. There's some speculation about him going for left.
Greg, from the air, we can see that he's well over one of the finished runways now.
Yeah, what they are flying over is what's called the lake bed compass. And from the air, I'm sure that our video or live shot will not show that, but it is a huge compass in the lake bed that is used for landings, night landings, day landings, to help teach pilots how to do so. And I'll have to apologize because the plane is flying right into the sun and I can't see it.
We see it from one of the ground cameras here. It's doing what it has been doing, and that is circling with it.
Dick Rattan is 48 years old. Okay.
Mission with the pilot.
Dick, just looking at those wingtips, I have to tell you, maybe it's a waste of time putting fiberglass over foam. That foam holds up real well, even all the way around the world. 25,000 miles test over there, right? Yeah, exactly. You know, 25,000 miles test on blue foam. We should not insult it by putting fiberglass over it. Not everybody has to last so much. Keep you out of range. I'd like to give you 50,000 miles on a car, I guess.
Can you see him now?
About 20 feet.
I mean, you're famous. Did you see him the first time? Are you sure you saw him? Yes, they were coming up. Well, you got good eyes. And they were so over. I think they're wrong. I was looking way too low.
Dick, the media did cover the Flat Earth Society during your flight.
Voyager flight, the first flyby will be solo. The second one will be with Chase, and then you can chase me through the second orbits for lowering the gear. Very similar to what we did at Oshkosh. Acknowledge?
Acknowledge, Dick. I understand that. 2, 3. Where would you like us to wait for you?
Just orbit high inside. It'll be a left 360 on the perimeter of the lake bed.
2, 3.
The Voyager right now is indicating 80 knots. We're descending at 500 feet a minute. The engines are at idle.
sun. Pull with the sun. Face to the sun.
Okay, Dick, the chases are moving back just a little bit here so that you can have your solo run. And chase 2s and 3, the Duchess is moving back towards you. We'll be with you, Mike. Green.
See Los Angeles all lit up in the morning.
So as the pilot describes the last moments of his flight and explains to people just where Voyager has been, because its flight path has been more or less a secret to keep all of the other curious aircraft away, and as he prepares to make a little solo run over the tens and tens of thousands of folk who've turned out at Edwards to see him in and see them in, we'd like to tell you that in our Washington studio now is John Pike. He is the Associate Director for Space Policy at the Federation of American Scientists. And he's going to talk to us about what we may have learned from Voyager's journey. John Pike, what have we learned except that it is, in the words of Pilot Rutan, an event? Is it any more than an event?
Well, I think it's two things. There's the emotional significance that we have today after a year in which the American space program really hasn't been doing too good. We have had the feeling that we sort of lost touch with the spirit of Lindbergh and the spirit of the Wright brothers. I think we've seen that we still have that. The combination of technical virtuosity and personal determination that we've had in this country since the Wright brothers, I think that we've seen that demonstrated again today. There are also some practical benefits from this. We've seen that we can build airplanes that are going to stay aloft not simply for hours, but rather for days. You could use an airplane like this to fly over forests to see whether there are forest fires starting, or send an airplane out to fly over the ocean so the fishing fleets can find fish. So I think that this is going to have some long-term practical significance, as well as being a very good Christmas present for the American people.
Not to gainsay anything or to downplay anything, but there was no real new technological breakthrough required for this achievement to have been done, was there?
Well, the breakthrough is a combination of two technologies. The very long, thin wings that Voyager has, that's been around for a long time. We use that on the U-2 spy airplane and on sailplanes and gliders. The fiberglass construction of the Voyager, we're using that on the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber. The breakthrough here was to combine the two. And by combining those two technologies, like I said, you get an airplane that can stay aloft for an unprecedented amount of time.
But then, what do we decide about it in terms of where it leads us? You say it might be good for surveillance of some sort, but we've had surveillance, the U-2, the SR-71s, etc. Is it more a pioneering of the technology or of the spirit of something that, as you mentioned at the outset, we've had some defeats in this long march, and some late defeats as well, and that perhaps the enduring value of it may be the human one?
Well, I think it's both. Certainly the profound sense of, I think, enjoyment that everybody has while we're watching this, a real sense of accomplishment. That's probably the most immediate, important part of it. But you also have that long-term practical impact as well.
Let's listen.
He's going to just zoom right down in front of him.
Reed, if you can hear me. Voyager just made a pass over the viewing area, and a huge roar went up from the crowd.
Photo Chase, you're clear to rejoin. Once more with photo.
Yes,
Put the gear down.
okay. I mean, right over.
About 3/4 mile behind, we're going up.
Greg, we've had the Victory flyover, and we've heard some things from Rutan, some patriotic things as well. This would indicate that apparently they're not in all that bad a shape, either medically, mentally, or physically.
Rutan and Yeager are superhumans, and they have certainly exhibited that throughout 9 days of flight. Much of lost sleep. They only ate 10%, we're told, of their food supply. If you could see inside of the cockpit, it's almost uninhabitable. Yet these two people have done it for 9 days. He just made his, I would believe, his final pass over the landing area. The chase planes have now picked him up. Such a beautiful sight.
Greg, do we know if he's on final now, coming in, or making another pass?
Well, I was getting ready to say that I would assume that this will be the landing phase. He's made basically 2 passes over, one at a higher altitude. He came down and he looked like he was about 1,000 feet in the air on his last pass. So now I would assume that he is in his landing mode.
Have said that this may sort of lead the way to higher use of epoxy and fiberglass, boron, that sort of thing in aircraft. Is that your belief?
Well, we've seen the use of these construction techniques on super-secret military aircraft. There's been some interest in applying them to business aircraft, but I think that the demonstration of the profound potential that this construction technique has, I think that this is going to break a lot of psychological barriers and lead to a much more extensive use in civilian passenger airplanes, helicopters, and business aircraft. It really provides that sort of breakthrough, the conceptual breakthrough needed to enable this technology to get much wider use than it has thus far. People have been sort of resistant to the notion of flying around in a plastic airplane, but now that they've seen that a plastic airplane can fly around the world, maybe they'll realize the potential it has.
When you say flying around, that takes a new meaning on.
It certainly does in this case.
All right, she is still flying around Edwards Air Force Base, where we keep being reminded that so many other people have done so much experimentation. Northrop with his flying wing that finally brought him to naught there, but which is still flying in a variety of other ways and may fly again as the advanced technology bomber finally gets unveiled. But the 2 people aboard are, after all, human beings, Homo sapiens, who are not used to this kind of environment and this kind of life. Dr. Curtis Graber is a research psychologist from the Ames Research Center out in California. Doctor, if you can join us now from the other end of the country, you briefed the pilots before the flight and sort of coached them on living under these extreme conditions. What did you tell them to expect?
Well, actually, we talked to Gina and Dick at NAP and problems of the body clock and problems of when they should sleep, when they should fly. And we told them that that kind of confinement and the problems of sleeping in these other kinds of conditions could cause extreme fatigue. Not to mention the possibility of disruptions of flight due to weather, which of course they really experienced more than they expected.
Right, what was the toughest thing that they had to adjust to, something they couldn't really anticipate or brace themselves for?
Oh, I think the turbulence in the cockpit was the, I would expect, it was the thing that I will say is the most difficult situation. That has a lot of other effects in terms of emotional effects and just physical punishment to the body.
Is there any way you can practice for that or get your mind set to it?
I think the other way you can hope to overcome that is have tremendous dedication to what you're doing and hope you can physically withstand it. And
maybe
get out of
join
that
the NFL.
Join the NFL and get yourself out of the storm system as soon as possible.
What about the mental stress?
Well, the mental stress, I think, is something that's truly remarkable that they've been able to persevere the way they have and succeed. Mental stress is extremely difficult, especially when you have the loss of sleep that they've had and the kind of physical punishment. And the concern I have, and I think a lot of us have, is that as you have more difficult flying situations develop, mechanical problems, or if today had been a difficult weather landing, that mental stress could have had serious impact on their ability to put that plane on the ground.
All right, can you compare this in some way with, say, the confinement and the amount of space allowable per body to, say, the Apollo flights to the moon or other confined space efforts?
Well, it's probably equivalent to some of the Apollo missions, but the difference there is, of course, that you had seats designed for both people that were comfortable and designed to take long-duration flight. Here you have one seat that's very well designed, as I understand it, for comfort, but another position where you're lying somewhat prone, stretched out, and difficult to be comfortable in those kind of conditions.
Did you get to know them well as people and as a team of persons?
No, I really didn't. We spent about a day or two with them, and they came up and discussed some of these issues, and we had some periodic contact after that, but I can't really say I know them well.
Now, what sort of just thumbnail sketch impression did you get of them, though, in the time you did know them?
Well, Dick struck us as a really dedicated, experienced pilot who had a mission to achieve, and Gina the same way. I should say that together they are calm, very reasoned, and had thought this mission out to every last detail that they could, and that kind of preparation is important, and it's what's behind the kind of performance we've seen in this mission over the last several days.
All right, Doctor, let's watch now as the landing gear of Voyager is down. She's making a pass directly toward our cameras at Edwards. It's a clean slice of aerodynamics coming head on, isn't it?
Sure is.
Yeah, stand by.
Air to ground, ground to air now.
Left gear is green.
Outstanding, yeah, we confirm that. The gear is down and locked. I really like your little main gear motor, Dick.
That's a cutie, isn't it? She's one hell of a good pilot, too.
I'll tell you what, Dick, you can say that again 100 times. I concur.
The team effort all the way.
That team is Jaeger pilot, right?
That's a Jaeger pilot. You bet.
The left one is down, not the right.
Left is down.
The left landing gear is down. The right one is not yet.
Greg, what do you do about that?
As I understand, it's a mechanical crank down. You do it with your hands. And they have gotten the left one down, and I would imagine they're now working on the right-hand side.
That's the same backup that you have in an airliner, if you want to go through all the struggle of it.
Of course, on Voyager, the point of it was to be as light as possible. So in many cases, they only have one system. And they were afraid during this flight that if any one of these critical systems
the Duchess is in position now. Anytime you want to turn your little motor on and bring the right gear down, we'll be waiting. Also, Dick, I have a little bone to pick with you. After the scare you gave me this morning, I've got gray hairs all over my head.
Well, this one is particularly gentle because it's come down very even because it has an official NAA gear counter on it to assure that the airplane did not land some other place for fueling. That little counter has to work. We may have to do it all over again.
You didn't seek landing on some aircraft carrier, did you?
No, unless I did a gear up.
Okay, we have a visual on the right main gear door is open. Yeah, and I can see Gina's doing it very smoothly, and here comes the tire. It's coming into sight.
There comes the right gear down now. And you want it down and locked.
And we see the main gear is about 70% down now.
It reports the gear down, and the pilot reports that the light is green.
Okay, Dick, and we confirm that. We saw it go over center and snap into position. It looks good. Both main gear are down and locked as far as I'm concerned.
And now there's only one way to find out for sure.
Pilot. It gets to lower the nose gear, so we'll try that the autopilot must come on. Autopilot on, mark.
Dick, what advice can you give us small plane pilots?
You know you did a good job getting those gear down.
Roger, always put your gear down before we land. That's very good advice. Thank you.
You can see the red track around the familiar map of the world. And that, of course, is the flight of Voyager past. The flight of Voyager present puts it way over there on the left, right at Edwards Air Force Base. Probably 80 miles an hour, maybe less, ground speed. As Rutan works to get the gear down.
1, Voyager 5.
Right gear, left gear, now the nose gear is down.
We show that the nose gear is out, the door is open, and I'm just moving in to check the over center position.
Do that. Recovery crew, take your place on the light bed, please, on the compass road.
Let's try to get some shot through.
And from the north to the south.
All right, Voyager 1-5 here, we are in position. Okay, Dick, I confirm that gear is down and locked, and we were asked to look at the nose gear real carefully because there was some talk of a low-pressure front tire. I disagree with that entirely. I'd say it's blown up just exactly like it was when you left.
Do that. Okay, the Voyager's down, meant for landing on the compass road.
Okay, Dick, the chase confirms that you are in the landing configuration, and go get it, boy. This is the big one, the one you've been training for.
This is the big one, yeah. Okay, stand by while Gina completes the checklist.
Reed, a doctor described to me what it was like for these people emotionally, and he said it was like driving around in a Volkswagen Bug for 9 days, nonstop, with 5 children in the back who all need to go to the bathroom at the same time.
Well, that doctor has a vivid imagination, doesn't he? Rutan thinks he has 3 good gear. He's going through his pre-landing checklist. Can't be too extensive because there isn't all that much up there.
Morrison, say 216 hours.
Okay, stand by, guys. We're going to recover this airplane.
Voyager 1, there was tower check wheels downwind, column clear to land, compass rose.
Here, Voyager 1, clear to land on the road. We have 3 green. Checklist is completed. The VRAF for this landing will be 54 knots. 54 knots VRAF with a touchdown of 45.
Wow.
So they've been cleared to bring it in.
And confirm, Mike, you will be right side. Confirmed, Fitz will be on the right side, well clear of him. He's got it now. Okay, fine, I'll be well clear left.
Okay, Fitz, I'm going to land parallel to one of those markers that I'm 90 degrees to right now. You can turn.
Flat right.
Okay.
Preferred one is to the south, but if you happen to line up one that's a little off of that, as long as it's you're happy with it, it's good to run with. You see the line there, just come around till you line up with where the mark is.
And that'll land to the right of it.
That's good. Excellent spot. We just ran it with the van and it's quite smooth.
Quite a contrast. You can hear sonic booms in the back from jets breaking the sound barrier, and here's a plane that travels at just 85, 90 miles an
Got
hour.
wheel height, Fitz. You're still at least 100 feet then. Yeah, I concur with that. You're about 100 feet then.
Yeah.
30 feet. 30 feet. 15 feet.
Come on, baby.
10 feet. 6 feet.
Yeah!
3
Down
feet,
on the
2
ground.
feet, 1 foot.
Yeah, he's down.
A feat no one ever thought was possible has occurred here at the dry lake at Edwards Air Force Base.
Miller time. Congratulations, Dick. You really did it, boy.
It wasn't the best landing I made, but I walked away from it.
It was gorgeous from where I was sitting.
Okay, ground, where do you want this thing? Voyager 5, where do you want this thing? Lost my radio.
No, you didn't, Dick. How about I would assume a right turn toward the crowd would be kind of nice, don't you?
I have no idea where they wanted.
Yeah, I wish somebody would talk. I would head right for the 747 over there. Hey, Tower, how you read the Capcom? Hey, Lonnie, sir. Okay, he's wanting to know which way to go here. If he turns right and heads towards the crowd, is that about right?
Voyager 1, this is 5. Just taxi directly toward those 5 towers you see ahead of you over the crowd.
Eddie, this is Capcom. I'm going to go ahead and come around and land here, and I'll land for the NASA ramp, but with an aim point behind them. Over.
Almost to the minute when it took off 9 days ago from Edwards Air Force Base. 4-minute gap. It took off at 8:02.
We're right behind you with the NAA officials.
Hello, I'm Bob Kane at CNN headquarters in Atlanta. We've just seen history made. The landing of the experimental aircraft Voyager after a 9-day round-the-world non-stop and non-refueled flight. Joining us live by telephone now from his home in California is Chuck Yeager, the test pilot we came to know so well, those of us who did not before at least, in the movie The Right Stuff. Colonel Yeager, are you there? Do you hear me? Chuck Yeager? We had established telephone contact with Chuck Yeager. Do you hear me, Mr. Yeager? He cannot hear us. All right, we will try to reestablish contact with Colonel Yeager, who must know so well many of the feelings and motivations that have been felt over the course of the past 9 days by Gina Yeager, no relation, and Dick Rutan, who carried out their own unprecedented non-stop flight around the world. A very different kind of flight from that performed by Commander Yeager throughout his career and the other test pilots to whom Edwards Air Force Base in California is home. Theirs usually involve a great deal of speed, aerodynamics, and extraordinarily high technology, whereas this one involved largely technology we've known for some time, simply a blending of human determination and blends of different kinds of technologies that made this unprecedented mission possible.
And what we will hear is... Here it is 2 days before Christmas, and an estimated some 50,000 people came out here in the coldness of the desert floor, and dark, and it was misting this morning, a little bit of snow. Even so, it was 2 days before Christmas. They were willing to make the trek to see history being made.
Hey, Lee, move to the right a little.
It should be interesting to see their reaction to when they get on the ground, because we've been told after this period of time, they might not be able to walk. There's an ambulance, 2 ambulances standing by from the Edwards Air Force Base to take them away and have them checked out for a couple of hours. Here he comes out of the plane. Cowboy hat and all. Removing his parachute.
You did great. How wobbly do you feel? How wobbly do you feel?
For 6 years, they wanted their day in the sun, and this morning they've gotten it right here on the dry lake bed. Edwards Air Force Base. And here comes Gina.
Aren't we supposed to have stretchers right here?
Their legs appear somewhat wobbly. We'll have to see
Say to America as you pull in.
what the condition is when they hit the desert floor.
It's really good to be back.
I guess the first question is, how does one feel after spending 9 days in an airplane?
Like a shower. Like a shower. I'm gonna sit here for a while, Doc.
Damn, you look good. You're ready to. Yeah. I'm surprised. How do you feel?
Fine.
Hey, baby. Not easy at all? Beautiful. Oh, neat. You guys did it.
Told you we'd do it. Dick, was there ever any doubt that you'd make it?
Many times.
At what point? What would you say was maybe the low point or your most fearful time?
Well, over Africa, when we decided that due to some type of anomaly with the airplane, that we didn't even have enough fuel to go across the Atlantic Ocean. We spent about a half a day and feeling pretty bad about that. But then we figured out where all the fuel was hiding. Then we felt better.
Where did you find it?
Well, it had a backflow problem, and it wasn't indicated properly. We really had the fuel, but we didn't know it.
All right? No.
Yeah, just grab his shoulder here.
Oh, okay, this is
That's not good. I want you to drop to the ground.
Okay.
Head first. No, don't go head first. Do something spectacular for the crowd.
Dick, what could possibly be next after this?
You mean besides a long shower and a shave?
Besides a long shower and
That must look terrible.
Sitting on a nice white horse. Damn, you look good. I didn't believe it.
Put a few more on there now.
Okay, I'll go there in a few minutes.
Gina, how are you feeling up there?
Right now, really good. I'm kind of taking it easy, too. Honestly, I think that.
I heard you took a lot of bumps and bruises during the turbulence.
She did. If I'd have known it was going to be 6 years, I don't know.
What was the high point?
Bob Jordan, fellow F-100 pilot, you did it. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I thought it felt pretty good.
The flight of the Voyager. 9 days ago, it started at Edwards Air Force Base at 8:02 in the morning.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It has ended here 9 days later at 8:06 in 18 seconds. Crew, pilots Dick Rutan and Gina Yeager, done something that was thought impossible. They went through rough weather. They had engine failure, fears of low fuel supplies, extreme fatigue, emotions running from every end of the scale. They have fought their way all the way around the world, and they have endured, setting aviation history. Voyager has landed safely with its crew on the ground, aviation history in their pocket. Go now back to Bob Kane at